Hi. Hello? Hi. You're just such a hog. You hog my time and money. You hog the screen. You hog the batteries. You hog the bed. You're just such a hog. But I can't quit you. What am I going to do? Hello everyone, thank you for joining me for this not unboxing video of the Cat 6015B from AliExpress. This is a not unboxing video because my unboxing experience was the same as everybody else for the last 2 years since the product was released. Where I might be able to bring some value is in sharing a little bit about my experiences with getting it set up, owning and operating it. There's some information that I wish that I had prior to purchasing, and I'll share that with you. But first, I'd like to talk a little bit about upcoming projects. It's been a while since I've published anything, but that doesn't mean I'm inactive. There are some things going on. So, current projects. One, RC model design trommel. Some upgrades, improvements, and customization for that. And if you are into RC construction, you might be able to guess what this is. This has been a 2-year-long project and it's almost done. And a couple of future upgrades include modifications, some detailing to the Volvo dumper and the DXR2 bulldozer. I'd like to replace the sound module in that. It needs some hydraulic work. If you own one, you know what I'm talking about. Now, on to the main event. I introduce to you the latest addition to my RC construction fleet, the Caterpillar 6015B model from AliExpress. I say from AliExpress because I honestly don't know the manufacturer's name. This model came to me with the light and sound options and the Paladin PL18 EV radio. This radio isn't required. There's often a lower cost alternative with this radio. But the Paladin has some advantages, and I'll talk a little bit about that. The thing's a beast. It's huge, right? It weighs somewhere over 100 pounds. I haven't tried to put it on my scale because it pretty much wrecks everything that I try to walk it onto. So I really haven't wanted to destroy my scale. It's somewhere over 100 pounds, probably not the full 56 kilos as advertised, but it's definitely more than I can move around myself. The dimensions, there are various sources online where you can find those, so I won't go over all of that. My overall impressions with it, I'm impressed. I'm pleased for the most part. There have been some minor things, but easy enough to work through. The hydraulic system in this thing is pretty impressive. The brushless motor and hydraulic pump are each about as big as my fists, and they sit way in the bowels back here. It has a lot of power and pretty darn good flow too. I'm pretty pleased with it. There is a hydraulic oil cooler where you would find an oil cooler on the real one. Hydraulic oil tank where you would find the oil reservoir on the prototype. Strangely enough though, there's no fan on the cooler, though it doesn't seem like it needs it. There's very little backlash in this model. It's fairly tight, except for in the slewing. That's been a little disappointing, but I don't know. There might be something I can do about that in the future. We'll see. The tracks seem a little bit delicate in a way because the tensioner spring in here isn't quite stiff enough. So I'll probably address that at some point. Otherwise, they seem to be stainless tracks and pretty stout in that regard. Some info about the batteries. This whole business up here, within about this volume, is the battery compartment, and it uses 3S 11.1 volt lithium polymers. Here's a bit of information that I wish I knew up front. So the opening, the usable opening on this battery compartment is about 12 centimeters by 21 and a half by about 7 and a half. And the cells, the packs that you could put in it are actually a little bit larger than that if you kind of tow it in. But that's really helpful in trying to figure out what kind of batteries you can put in it. Right now, this is what I have in it. 6 3S 5200 milliamp hour packs and a whole bunch of Y connectors. So for a total of about 30 amp hours. And I have about the equivalent of an hour of dirt time on it so far. And that didn't drain this array of packs. And I didn't try to figure out how far discharged they were. So what I know now about runtime on this capacity is it's somewhere over an hour, and in time I'll figure it out. The battery life on the radio is only about 2 hours. So I rigged it up with a power bank to help that. Operation of this thing. So it's really powerful, surprisingly powerful, and maybe even dangerously powerful. The capacity is great. 3 heaping scoops will heap the Volvo dumper quite nicely. But a note on loading trucks. So I've heard some complaints about the boom geometry and the ability to curl the bucket far enough to be able to load a truck and so on. It's important to understand, I think, that this is a model of a mining excavator, not a general purpose excavator. It's a dedicated purpose machine. It does one thing and one thing only, and that is dig up the ground and load it onto trucks as fast as it can, 24/7, 365. That's all it does. And so the geometry of the machine is optimized to that role. And that means there's a compromise in how easy it is to load a truck. It uses what's called a mass boom, which is short and stocky, and same for the stick. It uses a short stick and a really big bucket. Well, this limits the geometry in how it can move. And in real mining operations, the way that they'll typically compensate for that is they'll operate the machine from an elevated position and dig down and load a truck from above, or the operator will build and maintain a bench as they go to give them some elevation over the truck, and that helps a lot. So the proportions of this machine mimic the geometry of the real one. So be aware of that. I haven't found it to be, in my limited operating experience so far, I haven't found it to be particularly problematic or annoying. It's just like the real one. The truck has to be in the right place in order for it to be able to swing over and dump into the bed without a lot of spillover. Here's what I'm talking about. I'm Hans Bluda, and I'm going to load a scoop of dirt on this truck. The range out here and in here, where the truck can be and allow this bucket to dump, is it's pretty limited. I'm pleased to say that this model has a number of improvements over the early versions. The hydraulic reservoir, as I mentioned, being here as it is on the prototype, is a big improvement over being in this counterweight block where it was notorious for leaking severely. Cab window glazing. This model has some of the early models did not. Painted hydraulic hardlines on the boom. Some of the early ones were not painted. Fewer leaks overall. I've really had very little leakage with this thing, and I'm pretty pleased with that. Vinyl stickers. Some of the early models had paper stickers that people complained a lot about. These are vinyl. And all of the advertised details are present, which some people complained were not, like these caps, simply absent. But there have also been a couple of new issues introduced with this model. So while these stickers are vinyl, and the manufacturer was kind enough to not crease them in the packaging, they were rolled like this. Consequently, they all have a bit of a curl to them that I was not able to remove. That combined with the second, could you call it a problem? I don't know. It's definitely weird. Can you spot it? It's obvious and it's subtle. They painted the thing in matte paint. And you know what? Stickers don't stick to matte paint very well. So with all of my best sticker application technique, they're still peeling up around the edges, and some of those small ones have already just fallen off. And I'm not sure how to deal with that just yet. I'll figure something out. So, must-do modifications. Stickers, obviously. The matte paint is odd, I think, but not a showstopper. Driver. I added little Hans here, a brooder figure. Some figures that shipped with the model are all these people. They're typical of the figures that come with these Chinese models. Nothing particularly wrong with them, except that in a 1/12 scale model, they look comically small. And the female figure can't sit because her shirt is permanently attached here and her knees don't bend. So I'm not really sure what's up with that. But there was a very nice handwritten note that said that they were a free gift. So that was thoughtful. So one thing that I did to this that to me is a necessary modification is I went around this whole thing and removed a bunch of the hardware, the little bolts and hinges and cover plates and stuff like that, and painted them. Bolts that were on black parts, like even the railing, were nickel plated, and a lot of the bolts that were over yellow areas were blackened or nickel plated, and the hinges were all zinc plated. And a lot of the small stainless parts, little cover plates, like that hold these pins in and all this stuff, were plain stainless, simply laser cut and left that way. So I went around and painted them like they would be on the real thing. You know, Caterpillar doesn't emphasize the fact that their machines are built with bolts. They're just part of the machine, and they just paint them whatever the surrounding color is. So having all of these bolts being intentionally advertised, if you will, just kind of made it look like a toy to me. So it actually took quite a bit of time to go around and paint them all, to take them off, spray paint them, and stick them back on. I want to improve the cab wiring. There's a lot of visible wiring. Of course, I have it turned now, so you can't see it. A lot of visible wiring in the cab. I want to tidy that up. I want to replace the sound module. I really don't like it. It's the Cabolite sound module, and the sound samples don't have anything to do with this machine to start with. But more than that, it's just kind of odd to me. And I'd like to tighten the track tensioners, as I mentioned earlier. Logistics. So I would be doing viewers a great disservice if I didn't talk a little bit about part of the experience of owning this machine. It's big and it's heavy. And even though I planned for that, I did not fully anticipate what a challenge it would be. This is a subterranean workspace. The entry and egress is through a short, narrow staircase. And that was all fine getting this thing down here in its shipping crate when I had gravity on my side. Getting it back up is a different story. Simply moving it around is difficult. I don't have anyone to help me with this. So in anticipation of that, I bought myself a garden cart and a dog ramp to enable me to just walk the machine to where I need to go. But even then, there's some work involved, and it's a little bit pucker cinching to walk this thing up and down a ramp. I'm paranoid that I'm going to tip it off somehow onto the concrete floor. So just getting this thing from another workbench to this workbench took about 45 minutes. Now that'll improve with time as I get more proficient at it. That was the first time I've tried it. Getting it outside to get some dirt time was over an hour. What's involved? So I'll go over quickly what's involved. So to get from this workbench to outside, I have to bring the cart over, set up the ramp between the bench and the cart, walk it down onto the cart, wheel the cart over to a workbench that is near the staircase, set up the ramp again, walk it up onto that workbench, and then use a couple of specially made ramps that I built specifically for the one use case to get from that workbench to the top of the staircase. And then I have to somehow drag the dog ramp and the cart up to the top of the stairs, set up the ramp again so that I can walk this thing over the door sill to get outside, set up the ramp again onto the cart so I can walk it up onto the cart, and then pull the cart out to the work area, set up the ramp again, and walk it back down. And all the while I have to be really careful to not flip the cart over because of the weight of the machine. I have to put a foot on the other end of the cart and hold it down so that it doesn't flip over and dump the thing off. So I'll get better at it in time, but for now, it's a bit of a chore. So I've only had it outside once. And that does kind of impact the owning experience. In the future, when I go and operate with the guys, I'll have somebody to help me for at least part of the logistics. But around here, it's just me, and it's kind of a chore to move it around. So I thought you should know that. I would be doing you a disservice to not talk about that, at least touch on that. My conclusion is, I'm happy that I bought it. It's been a great experience so far. It's a lot of fun to operate. It's a good value for what it is. I mean, these things are expensive, right? Would I recommend that you buy one? Hell no. I would not recommend that anyone spend $5 grand on a radio control toy. But if you're thinking about it and you like value the way that I do, this is not a bad choice. And I'll put the seller that I bought it from in the comments. Seems to be a really good guy, even with after-sales support. Thanks for watching. I hope you got something out of it. This has been a great experience for me, and I am really looking forward to getting some more dirt time. Catch you later.